Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast, Unresolved Textual Tension. It's me, your host, Maria, and with me today are my handsome bitches, Katie and William.
Hey guys, what's up? It's been a bit since it was the three of us, but we're returning to the original three amigos, which means friends in Spanish.
Thank you.
Latin pride. That. Okay, what book are we doing today, Katie?
Sorry. We are doing The Listeners by Maggie. I can't say her last name. What is it?
Stiefvater.
Stiefvater. By Maggie Stiefvater. Oh, wait. Go ahead.
Yeah, I asked Ellen, and she sent me a recording of it. And
so
she
it's
was
not
like,
Stiefvater. What is it?
No, it's Stiefvater.
Stiefvater. Okay,
I'm kind of Germaning up the Vater part. It's not as German as that, but my brain wants to, so we're going to go with it.
Okay, Maggie, by Maggie. Everybody can say Maggie.
I'm still saying Stiefvater, so it's fine.
Stiefvater.
And we also read it, well, at the very least, I know Maria and Will, because they did it before me, read her other book, The Scorpio Races, which I constantly get confused with something else.
We all read The Raven Boys.
I did not read The Raven Boys.
That was just you and me.
Oh, that was just you and me?
I literally just told you yesterday I own all the books and I've not read them.
Oh, I don't know why in my head you're there for that video, but yeah, Will and I have also read The Raven Boys. I've read the entire Raven cycle. And yeah, so this is our third foray into the Stiefvater universe. Yeah.
And
specifically, go ahead.
I was going to say, and real quick, just like as a comparison, because we may as well say it now, how did you guys feel about the Scorpio Races?
Oof. That is maybe in the top channel. 5 or 10 in this channel's history. It is a book that is only the thing it wants to be, and what it wants to be is good. It's so pared down and like effective.
It's absolutely recognizable. Will and I did a breakdown of some narration too on our craft analysis stream, and it's really, really good. And then what would you say about The Raven Boys?
Raven Boys, you enjoyed it more when you read it. If you go back and you rewatch that video,
go ahead.
Yes,
women first.
Will, I think, is misremembering. If he goes back and rewatches that video, he actually quite enjoyed a lot of it. It wasn't as good for him as the Scorpio Races, and I am just going to speak for you. But it had a lot of what she does well is characters, and really unique characters, and the side characters, and like the aunts, the uncles, the people in the background.
Making them feel real, like actual real life breathing creatures.
And Raven Boys had a lot of that because it has a really interesting ensemble cast, and it played with some darker ideas, and it was interesting, but it wasn't, because it's in a series, it wasn't as clean or as pared down as the Scorpio Races for me. And the series as a whole had that throughout that I found, especially there were times where like there was kind of things the book semi-explored, and then it would like go in a different direction in the next book, and that this thing is no longer explored as much, and it's a book series less about the plot specifically than it is about the characters navigating through these events, and I would say that has a lot of similarity to this book,
which is that's what my concern is with this book, but that being said,
you actually can say what you thought about the Raven Boys.
I did like the Raven Boys. I thought it was a good book. Again, I think it really, the thing is, Stiefvater is a really talented writer. Like, she's really talented, and so she can skate by just on the talent of her prose and dialogue and character, in a way that a lot of other books can't. And I feel like that's why this book kind of works as much as it does, is because she's a really talented writer. And it's not necessarily because the book is well put together in the way that like the Scorpio Races were. So I was like fond of the Raven Boys, but I didn't feel a need to read more of it. It's probably the best way to put it.
Yes, that sounds about right. I don't think you had any interest at the end of that one, where I read the whole series and enjoyed it.
But Maria also just reads. This is kind of like she dies if she doesn't. She's like a book shark.
Yeah, I enjoy just reading. I don't just read for this podcast, and there are times where I actually just enjoy reading something that I can just enjoy for myself, and I don't have to do on a deadline. So I think of the three of us, I think I read the most outside of this podcast.
Oh yeah, I don't read outside this podcast.
Creatively, 1,000,000%. I read. My other time is inundated with academic reading currently at this moment, and also other people's writing. Like that's all I
Other
read.
people's
For
stuff.
pleasure, baby. For pleasure.
Yeah, I miss for pleasure.
Women.
I have. That's a whole other thing. I have a stack of books here that I'm going to ask Will if we can read, because that's the only way I'm going to fit it in to my schedule. And if Will says no, I'll cry myself to sleep.
I don't like women having choices. Okay, Katie, go ahead and say what you were going to say.
I don't think I was going to say much other than the fact that the whole plot versus character thing kind of makes sense in this book as well. I think this, like, should I wait to give you my feeling? Like, are we going to do summaries of our overall feelings or no?
Let's premise.
Yeah, let's premise and we can talk a
and
little bit
then
more
we'll
about
give
it.
the overall feelings. Who would like to
sounds good.
premise?
Maria, you know you're good at it.
Okay. So the premise of this book is, what if you own or managed a really, really fancy high-end luxury hotel in
Appalachia.
World War II, in Appalachia in West Virginia, and then the government was like, we have all of these Axis diplomats and we'd like to host them at your hotel, and you have to take care of them, and you as a hotel manager had to deal with the complex feelings of housing Axis diplomats and actual Nazis, and treating them well, and dealing with your staff, and also discovering things about yourself and these two men in your life, one of which is an FBI agent. So
also there's also probably magic. There's probably some type of magical force.
There's magic water. There's hot springs and water, and it smells like eggs, and it's magic. So that's, congratulations, you've been premised.
And I never felt like those elements quite came together. It felt like she had read a lot of history books, which she says in the afterword. And
That's
then she tried to stick it all in a book, but it didn't quite play to her strengths and what she was interested in. So she kind of veered off into what she was interested in. But that left a lot of elements kind of marooned. Like the Sweetwater is kind of lame. Like it never goes anywhere or does anything interesting, I found. And the book is really more of a character study, but then at the same time, we're told in the last third that like certain things have been happening that were not shown on page. Like my experience with this is I really liked the first 2/3. I was engaged, I was interested, and the last third, I don't think she brought it together. But she's such a talented writer that like she didn't necessarily need to bring it together. Like, you know what I mean? For those, it works good because she's a good writer, but it's not really a functioning novel in a lot of ways.
I completely agree. Katie and I briefly spoke about this last night, and by briefly I mean like we were like 15 minutes into a conversation before her husband pipes up and goes, "Aren't you guys talking about this tomorrow? Why are you doing it now?" And
I appreciate him.
Yeah, and then we promptly got off the phone, and I had
literally that second I was like, "Okay, bye."
Okay, yeah, she was like, "I'll talk to you tomorrow," and then like we were off the phone. And there's a lot of things I like about this book, a lot of elements that are really nice, but Will is completely correct. And Katie and I discussed this yesterday as well, but there are certain things that are just not fully developed or kind of don't pan out in a way that I thought would be like... It's like there are these beautiful ideas or concepts and they're put there, but they don't really go anywhere. Like I would say 411 is a prime example of that. Yeah. I thought more was going to happen with that, and we'll explain who 411 is in a minute. So the romance, very weak for me. Especially because, and Will and I spoke about this, there's another character. So there's the character that our main character ends up with. And then there's this other character that is supposed to be set up as like, you know, the guy she liked before, but she's not going to end up with. But for some reason, the author decides to give you way more page time about this other guy so that you're actually shipping them at multiple points, and you want them to work out, but then the narrative is like, fuck that guy, he's actually not good, and we're gonna end up with this other, and there was multiple points where I was like, I just want him to come in, and I want this to happen, and then you have to remind yourself, no, that's not what the book is doing, but I'm like, why did why did you give us so much page time for this guy if he's supposed to be the other person?
The foil to the actual love interest.
Yes. And I think what Stiefvater is trying to avoid is she doesn't want to be like, oh, he was just an asshole. And you know, like how sometimes there's a character that is purposefully just shit so that the other guy looks so good. And I think she was trying to.
You mean
the Titanic?
What were you gonna say? Oh no, I didn't read that one. The
movie.
Oh,
Titanic.
Oh, you mean the general movie?
Yeah.
The Titanic.
Fair enough. No, I was thinking, isn't his name Tamlin? It's not Tamlin, is it?
Yes, it is Tamlin. It's fucking Tamlin and Rhysand.
Yes, and it really made me angry there, and it made me angry here as well. So whenever you're ready, I'm ready to stomp down on that point in a moment.
Yeah,
and the thing is, you're right. She tries to add nuance, but then at the end, she's like, "Oh shit, no, he is absolutely terrible this whole time," and you're like, "I don't know about that."
And it's crazy because like. She presents this nuanced character that feels very, layered and has problems, but is a person. And then in the end, she kind of like pulls the rug out. And so like the romance obviously needs work. And I'll give Katie a chance to get up on that step stool in a moment. But I just want to cover a couple of other things. The Sweetwater, super underdeveloped. There is this idea of who you are as a performance versus who you actually are. And the Sweetwater functions more as a reflection of that than as this cool cosmic or natural force. Like, I love the idea of a natural wild force that you're attempting to control, bound, and stuff like that. But then as a reflection for this other thing, it ended up being quite toothless.
I would like to actually add on to that real quick. So one of the key themes, like Maria just said, is the reflection bit, which makes sense. It's water, mirror, blah, blah, blah. Got it. But so there's a specific dichotomy between wild Sweetwater that she comes into contact with, which is just this really fresh stream that has nothing to do with the hotel, and how it's like boundless and like free and very fae-like. And it's like water mentality. And then you've got the Sweetwater at the hotel, which is in the pipes and is in all this stuff. And it absorbs the feelings. And I felt like what she really missed the mark on, and maybe this is just what I wanted out of it, whatever. But the point is like, okay, it's a reflection, right? So ghosts. Why don't we have more ghostly encounters? Not like literal ghosts, like, woo, ghost. But like the scene, there's this one scene where she goes into a room and the angry vibes of that room and the dissatisfaction and everything makes it like a cursed room where there's the ugly smell and like it's hot and it's like hell and purgatory.
Yeah, I would have liked a delivery on the horror elements of the Sweetwater.
Yes, okay, the horror elements. That's what I mean.
It sets it up too early on. There's like this tension.
And there's this, everybody keeps saying the water's turning, and you're like, what is that?
Horror. Ready for that horror moment, and you don't really get it.
And Will made the point that this book ends on a whimper instead of a bang, which is insane because it ends with the hotel flooding. Spoiler. But I don't know how you flood the fucking hotel consciously and it ends up feeling like a scene in the background of a different, like,
yes,
it is wild how that works.
It's the pacing.
Yeah. But really quick, some of the stuff I think it does well. There's a lot of small character moments or scenes between smaller characters or our main characters with smaller characters that work really well. Like there's this really awesome scene of these three guys throwing paper planes over a balcony in a ballroom that works really well. And there's one where this character we haven't even mentioned, Minnick, who is the unfortunate, he's supposed to be the love interest, but he's not the guy you root for, despite being a really good character. I like Minnick as a character, but there's this point where he talks to one of his agents towards the end as people are making apple pies around them, and it's this beautiful scene, and it just works so well, and the dialogue is good, and the impact of him being like, I'm leaving the FBI, spoiler again, is just absolutely fantastic. And you're like, wow, what an impactful emotional moment. And then somehow in these grander moments, we just completely
lose
fall
the plot.
flat.
And that's what I mean by her being very talented. She's really good at like these little, to draw a war analogy. She's very good tactically, but strategically and operationally, she's not great. And like, so these scenes, they work and they pop, and the characters work and pop, but like, it doesn't come together. Not like in the way the Scorpio races did, which was like such again, there's nothing in that book that doesn't need to be there.
So good.
And so, yeah.
Katie, some of your thoughts?
Yes, similarly to what has already been said, there are parts of it that I feel, so obviously there's the water part. It's a huge influence. I can't believe we didn't get a scene, and one could say the less you say, the more you can infer, which might create a mysticism that heightens the mood or the tone of a novel. But in this case, there are pieces missing from the depiction of the water, and specifically our main character, our protagonist's interaction with it, that I feel like would have only made it stronger and built. For example, whenever we get to the part where we talk about the Avalon 4, like, there are these allusions to these really important key moments, but I feel like I actually don't really know what the toll is. It's supposed to be this huge toll, and I just don't really feel it. I guess is what I have to say.
Not. She doesn't adequately show the act, because that was one of my things. And to summarize it a little bit, to give some context, our main character June has to go into a specific like hot spring pool,
an area in the spring, and she feeds it good or bad emotions.
She takes all the bad emotions the water has and gives it all of her good emotions, and so it literally drains her. She has a hard time feeling afterwards. And
but that was not.
We never see it. We never really get to see the toll that it takes on her, or how terrifying, because there's this other point where she's terrified to kind of go back in, and she knows she has to. And I'm like, I never really bought it.
Felt terrified.
Yeah.
And exactly. I did not buy it. I did not buy, not that it was happening, but how heavy
the toll was.
The process must have been. It all just felt very, very minute in comparison to what it really should have been. It's because it was one of the massive acting forces in the novel. But that being said, there's also other aspects. Like, for example, there's this little girl named Hannelore, and she is a very key feature. She is the reason the climax of the story happens the way it happens. And yet I feel as though, while I didn't necessarily need like a whole 12 chapters dedicated to her or whatever, where you explore every feeling and every interaction she's ever had, I still needed more from her. It's because I just don't really buy why our main character, June, cares about this girl. I mean, I do, obviously. Oh, sure, empathy. You don't want the girl to be killed. You don't want her to be brainwashed, sterilized. At one point it's mentioned it's because of what situation she's in. So, of course, nobody wants that to happen. But there's a difference between empathizing and not wanting something to happen and giving up your entire life because you believe in the cause.
The book tries to justify it by being like, I also was autistic as a child. But like, it doesn't really fit. Yeah.
I thought there were going to be more scenes with her interacting with the child, not like a bunch where it would take up a portion of the book, but at least three major interactions or two where she had a meaningful moment with the child. Like, for example, when Hannelore first comes to the place, she interacts with the environment, and instead of it being like June, which it didn't have to be June, but instead of it being June that like communes with her in this moment, instead it's these other actors in the scene. And I'm just like, I just needed like some type of moment of them communing with each other where they really understood, because otherwise it really just felt like a pantomime of what was supposed to be. So I agree with Will and Maria on the same points. I think it's a very skillfully done book. Obviously, she said she did 4 years of research. It really comes through in the small moments, in particular with the little details. And it's very, very effectually written, but it's just unfortunately not well sewn together into a tapestry that really shows a beautiful picture like Scorpio Races does.
Yeah. No, it's really true. It's disappointing, but it wasn't awful to read.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to jump into the plot though, Maria?
Yes. Let's do it. So, this book opens in the winter after Pearl Harbor. Like Pearl Harbor has just happened. And our main character, June Hudson, is the general manager of the Avalon. It is the hotel of hotels, the pinnacle of luxury, the who's who of the American elite come to the Avalon to have their needs met and have a nice time where not much happens, but they feel great afterwards.
And there's this really cool dichotomy immediately defined, if that's okay that I say, between luxury versus wealth, where you can have wealth and not luxury, or have luxury and not wealth. And it's really about what is luxurious to the individual. And that's a great concept that she does explore very well.
And one of the really quick, I just want to say I love this setting. I find something so, as someone who loves really nice hotels and places, and like who has had the opportunity to stay at a place like the Avalon, and to be like there's something, but also I come from a background as a human where I like trying to, like, I see what's happening with a group of people and then going like, oh, this person probably needs this. Like, there is a part of me that I find very similar to June Hudson, but also the idea of a well-run machine of a hotel just, it scratched an itch. Yeah. I ate the crap out of it. The tiny details between like getting the restaurant staff to work, like, and then the wait staff and the room cleaners and the girls who answer the hotel in the same voice, like what you have to do and all the tiny pieces of work that come together to make luxury.
Like how, not a patient, shame. A guest might like certain things in the morning, like a hot toddy in the evening, and know that like all these little things make them. I wanted to go into hospitality so bad out of college. Well, in my junior year of college or third year or whatever, I was like, oh, hospitality's it. That's the way for me. And I'm so glad I didn't do that. But the point is
people
I get
faces.
That.
Yeah. And there's something magic about taking, because I work in travel currently, and
you basically work in hospitality almost.
Yes. There's something magical about taking a very angry, upset client, figuring out why they're actually upset, and then just calming them down, getting them back on board, and then like working through the problem with them. And then at the end of the phone call, they're like, "Thank you so much.
You're the best."
God. And you're just like,
I know.
But anyway,
it's the best.
But it also functioned very similar to me in the reasons I liked the market exchange system stuff in Spinning Silver. Like the level of detail you get about how the bartering system works and how you can take this thing and end up with like so much more. There is a very fantastic day-to-dayness about it, and a slice of life where it's not mundane everyday normal person life. Like it's not breakfast, go to work. It's this specific slice of somebody else's life that you don't have
so it's
experience with. But it's interesting, and it's also told in a way that's very engaging. But yeah, so we enter at the Avalon. They're getting ready for a party, and you know, there's worry about how the war is going to, now that America is in World War II, how it's going to affect all of these luxury restaurants. And our girl June, she's like, I carried us through the fucking depression on my back. I made the decisions that got us through, and we came out of it. We went in a great luxury hotel, and we came out of it a fucking legend. And so she's like, I can handle this. And very quickly, there's a few things you learn. Her staff love her. Not only is she a good general manager for the customers and the, not clients, the guests staying at the hotel, she is excellent to her staff.
Can I just say, having a character that's the captain of a ship is so satisfying. It is so unique to have a main character. I feel like I haven't read a main character in ages where they lead a group of people and all the people respect them and it feels real.
Yep. It does. She feels legitimately good at her job.
Yeah, and there's a great kind of, like Marie said, there's a great kind of daily life aspect to it, and a little bit of a coziness And you can tell, yeah, Stiefvater has really done her research in terms of getting all these details correctly. All of the staff call her Hoss. And she also kind of trades in on her like cowboy-y way of talking and her accent. The book talks about that in terms of like how she kind of has to maneuver herself as a little bit quaint to get people to like her, and be at a luxury hotel. And so I thought and that's kind of the first moment of like talking about masking and a different identity that the book kind of brings up, is that she is, a poor Kentucky. I can't remember if it's Kentucky or not.
It's
West
not
Virginia.
West Virginia. It's the same area that she's currently in.
Look, this book reminded me a lot of Justified, and so that's kind of what I kept thinking of. And so, what was I saying? Yes. And so this is the first time it kind of comes up that she kind of has to hide that to be around people. She's very aware of all these little tiny micro interactions and stuff like that. I wish a little bit more had been done with this later, but this is the first time you really notice it.
That's fair. And also the first painting of the picture you really get of her is her getting ready in the morning, which is such a, I really liked that. And I don't feel like it really came full circle in the best way, but that's fine. It's fine. But the point is you have to imagine woman with that kind of I can't do the accent, but the as they call it, the mountaineering accent. So mountain accent. And she's got dark hair to her chin that when she's out and about, she has just around her face, nice and coiffed. When she's not, it's slicked back in styling gel. She's got her wide-legged slacks with her blouse and her coat and her 3 dachshunds that follow her around. What a unique protagonist image. Usually also, this is reserved for the old ladies.
Adult woman.
Mm-hmm.
This is an adult. That's the other thing we haven't mentioned. This is not a YA
19-year-old,
these are whole ass adults.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is she a grown woman, she's been general manager of this hotel for 10 years. So she's not new hat. This is not it's her first day as general manager of the hotel. No, that's not the story. This is when the book opens, it is a woman who is comfortable in her job, who's been doing it for a long time, is damn good at it and knows it, and seems to have immense pride in what she does, and loves the Avalon as an institution and as a concept. And she starts her day. They're getting ready for this party that she's putting on with the guests, and they're gonna do a poetry. She was normally this poetry party, it's to celebrate this one Scottish poet, Burns, is normally a small little affair. And she was like, this is the first big thing. Also, the other thing I have to mention is the previous owner, the owner of the hotel who trained her and was the general manager before her, was Francis Guilfoyle. And he died 2 months ago, not that long ago. It's pretty fresh. And so she's been general manager for 10 years, but he was also her mentor, the person who trained her,
father figure in some ways.
And everything. And she's also very close to his kids, the Guilfoyle children, one of which we learned, Sandy, is in the war. And there's this worry about how is the war going to affect the hotel. And she's kind of a little cocky, and she's like, it won't. We'll get through. It's not going to touch us. And she knows that she might lose staff, that a lot of her male younger staff are going to get drafted. And that's something. But for the most part, she's like, we continue business as usual. So she's like, we're making the Burns party event instead of the normal kind of thing. We're making it an event. They have a whole contraption that floats ribbons of poetry in the ballroom. And it's a whole big thing that she's working on. And as she's kind of getting this together, and you're going through all of these different scenes, she gets a letter I think, yeah, she gets a letter from this guy, Edgar Guilfoyle, and immediately you sense some tension.
She's
Uh,
like, ooh, she'd gone back to his arms even though she'd known it was a
yeah.
mistake. And you're like, ooh.
Yeah, and in the after his father's funeral, seeking comfort in each other, and like you realize she has a history with the eldest Guilfoyle son, and they not only they grew up together, but
They grew up together.
They there's a little something, and they spent a month in New York doing things,
and that's all you gotta know.
Immediately, he's not going to be Endgame because he's rich. And rich boys never get to be
and
Endgame
also because he's
like
not POV.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, just in case.
I was actually really disappointed, just to be completely frank with you guys, when we did switch POV and we got Tucker. I was like, man, they just built up this character so much, and she did it in such a. They built up this character. She built up this character, Ed Guilfoyle, in such a nice, not to be, no pun intended, but in a gilded light. And he just really seemed faulted like a normal human, but very solid, and it seemed very close in love. At least we get June's perspective, and she's in love with him. And so I just like, anyway, we'll get to that point later on, but we're also introduced during these scenes to the first instance of the supernatural, because when they're trying to hang up the apparatus for the piece that is supposed to allow the poetry to come down, something, water dampens something, breaks it, whatever, and they're like, oh, it's the sweet water.
It's turning.
Yeah, and so they're like, and also they hear, this is one thing I want to mention now, so that way I hope it comes up later. They mention in the scene that there was a laugh of some sort, and the laugh comes up, and it seems very important, and they're all spooked by it. And this laugh comes up in multiple places, and I know whose laugh it's supposed to be, I think, but I don't understand why the importance of it, because it never does anything.
Yeah,
but anyway.
I would say I agree. And so we've had a couple of touches with the sweet water. Our girl drinks it every morning. She has 2 glasses, and every night she has 2 glasses. And she has started talking about how the water gives what you give it, and it feeds off of the guests. And so if her guests are happy, the water is happy, and and there's this sense of this symbiotic relationship between the sweet water and the Avalon and our girl June. But yeah, so there's some stuff people are like, because number one, Mr. Francis died, okay? And the Sweetwater's being weird, and so people are like, oh my god, we heard laughing on the 4th floor. That's where Mr. Francis lived. And so there's that kind of like undercurrent. But don't worry about the supernatural. Life's coming knocking. Who should show up on June's doorstep?
The FBI.
But the fucking government. They're like, hello, June. Nice hotel you got here. We'd like to put diplomats in it. And at first, June thinks, because like Edgar Guilfoyle shows up, and he's like, we have to have this meeting. And she's like, because she realizes that he didn't show up for a pleasure trip, because he pops up, and she's like, oh, you showed up because of this shit. And he gave her a letter about it, but it was like the day this event was,
and it was very vague.
Happening. Yes, it was super vague. She didn't understand what was happening. So these like government men come in to talk to her. She has them going through like the side entrance, because you're not guests, you don't get to go through the guest entrance.
Love that.
She tries to say no. Like her first, they're like, okay, here's what we wanted, and she's just like, no. This isn't what
what's really, and this is actually a really good footfall for the decay of their relationship. But again, it's just not developed as well as I think it could be. But freaking Ed didn't talk to her about anything, and she's the GM. And these guys are, and when she says no, they're like, oh no, people above your station have already agreed upon this, meaning Ed, the owner / the person who inherited stuff. And so Ed has already agreed to the FBI using this location for the ambassadors and all the other potential spies and stuff for the Nazis, whether it's Japan or Hungary or Germany. And they're just one of many hotels that unfortunately have to undergo being a prison for these people in the meantime. But June was not aware of this situation whatsoever. None of this was made clear to her. And instead of being a true partner in any sense of the word, whether it's a business partner or a lover, he just is like, he seems like one thing that's done well is he's painted to be like a child who's afraid of getting in trouble.
Yeah, the thing about it is it's actually a really good scene because before this we get introduced to Minnick, who is Tucker Minnick, who's like, he's an FBI agent, but he's kind of down on his luck. Something happened. This is, he's being exiled a little bit.
This is his last chance to prove himself.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that.
It's very that. But it's like, okay, and he is a very kind of acerbic, straightforward person. And so when they go in, it's him, Gilroy, and Herb, and also a guy called Brubeck, I think.
Pennybacker.
Who he thinks of as very kind of weak, though we get from her perspective later that he's not. But yeah, that was a nice little thing. But basically, neither Pennyback nor Gilroy want to tell her the tough news. So he's like, look, we're both South Carolinians. I'm just going to lay it out for you.
It's fine. It's fine. Just
West Virginians.
Let it be.
We're both white trash, and we're just I'm gonna let you know how it is. And he just tells her straight up front, and other people would think it was rude, but it was, and like, it's just a good scene to set both of their characters and their like straightforwardness.
It is a great scene, and we get the agents arriving and having to go in through the back entrance from Minnick's point of view. And it works really well. And him, because like you have these two like powerful, opinionated people kind of bashing heads in a room of people who won't say the thing. And because like June's like, she's like, I don't even have to think about it. No. And he's like, you can't say no. And it works really well. And one of the things that June notices during this is, despite having not a mountaineering West Virginia accent, this guy has a coal scar. Or a coal tattoo, she calls it, where he had a wound or something that happened on his neck that coal got into, and so it stained the scar, so it's black, and they call them coal tattoos. And so she immediately clocks, oh, this guy's from a coal background. This guy's from a mining background.
It's great because he constantly, it gets brought up again and again to the point where it becomes a meme in my mind, but he stands like...
Yeah, I love it though, because it's such a good visual language of like, he's just like,
and he's closed off and just grumpy, and I
love it though. Yeah, no, I mean, it becomes a meme a little bit the way it's used in the book. It's because every time something hard happens, he's like, and then he straddled his legs and put his hands in his armpits and stood like a boxer waiting or something like that. And I'm just like, I love that. It's just really funny how it's just like, it is his tick, his character tick.
So she basically learns, no, you don't have a choice. These diplomats are coming. And she's like, how do you expect me? She's like, I have staff that are going to be drafted. I have staff who have lost people because of how do I face my staff and tell them that they have to serve and cater to these Axis diplomats and like some literal Nazis. And, she basically was so like, tough tits, you got to figure it out. And so she immediately starts the process of, and because they were like, when they first get there, they're like, why are the guests still here? And then that's what makes her realize that Ed Guilfoyle wasn't communicating with her, because they told Guilfoyle that the guests needed to be gone because the diplomats were coming. And because he was a chicken shit. And this is what I thought was going to happen. I thought Guilfoyle was going to start as a coward and then have to character growth his way into being a braver human. And
that would have made him a love interest, because he was already a love interest. So we had to bring him down a peg, Maria.
But the thing is, even if he wasn't a love interest, you can have someone be compelling,
it could be
and grow, and she still doesn't end up with him. I don't know why we have to like murder our like second love interest. Like, it doesn't have to be that way.
Again,
guys.
It doesn't have to be Tamlin. Tamlin doesn't have to be a random like I was going to say masochistic. That's not what the word I wanted to use. But you know what I mean? Like
an asshole. You
didn't have to completely change a character, which doesn't necessarily happen in this case. But like, you don't have to degrade somebody to make them not the right person for somebody.
Yeah,
it's very true. And the other theme that's kind of brought up here is the idea that like the events are so massive, the people involved aren't. They have no real agency. So like the argument he makes to her that like really hammers this in is like there's hundreds of people have made these decisions. You know, the president has signed off on this. This gear is turning, and we are a cog in it. You do not have any decisions. People more important than me and you have made this, and it's happening. They're already on the trains here, kind of a thing, and that the book will try to talk about, but I don't think so does affect. I don't think
no,
effectively
not at
does
all.
though.
I would fully agree. I don't know, again, because I don't know that I really know his character, but I feel like it almost felt like a assassination to have him not communicate that. Like, I mean, fine, I do like the characterization of somebody being so cowardly, and like also like, again, he's portrayed as a child. It like literally many times June says, and as a child, he would do this really nervous tick, and he still does the nervous tick because he hasn't fully grown out of childhood, and that's fine, I guess, but there's just like so much mixed language and feeling with this character that I just kind of like, but not like in a good way. It's not like sophisticated.
The problem is it's too many things. We have a lot of it's the too many things problem. We have the backdrop of this war. After this, and it's really interesting. There's this tiny moment in the story where they talk about how, like, what are we going to name this one? And June notes that they're not going for the like highfalutin grand names of the previous one, the war to end all wars.
Well, the hopeful, the war to end all wars.
End all
They're
wars.
like, no, this is happening.
This one has much darker, drier names, and she makes the point that the Second World War is the one that feels right to her. And so you're in this where we had a world war, a depression, and now we're here at this point. And so it's this really fantastic slice into, and like, you could have just had it with that, but then you also have the Sweetwater coming into play. And then it is also a personal drama about these individual people in this hotel. Like, it's a semi Wes Anderson, like there's a Wes Anderson film in here, you know?
There is actually,
That's actually
really
a
good.
Wes Anderson film in here, but then there's also a horror film in here. And then there's also a war movie in here.
No. I think it could have been balanced the correct way with the right perspectives at the right times. And I don't think we switched and focused on the right things in the middle of the novel.
I think thematically she needed to decide what she was going to do, and then she could have added. And part of it is just there is not a clear theme or thematic message.
Absolutely,
going through the book.
Yeah. And there's just a lot of these great ideas that don't fully get fleshed out because they're battling for space in the tiny interpersonal moments between these different groups of people. They're battling for space in the fear of the Sweetwater, and like what, because the entire time you're waiting for the Sweetwater to turn, and what does that look like? And what does that feel like? And
how great would it have been if the Sweetwater started reflecting back, as it is said is to do, to the hateful nature of some people, because as we are we need to progress with the plot, but as we are revealed more like towards the end, like just the hateful nature of some people, like how great would it have been for some rooms to be haunted, like in that vibe.
You know what book this reminded me of, Katie, is the one you and I did on World War One, The Warm Hands of Ghosts.
Yep, I know.
This one is a better one than that one, because that one had the devil and he just played a fiddle and stole. It was such a dumb. So what a dumb fucking book. You're gonna have the devil and he's like, haha, I have a fiddle and I'm vaguely gay, and it's like, that's not really. But but that book did not wasn't able to really draw all of its elements together thematically in a way that made sense, even though it's quite a well written book.
Yeah, and I honestly, I just think that's one of the biggest problems with this one. It's just the too many things. Continuing though, they get rid of all the guests, except there's one guest who won't leave because she technically doesn't have to. And they're like, what do we do about this? So June's like,
Please
we're just, and
back.
and it's this guest called 411. And 411, nobody calls her by her name. Nobody really knows her name, but she's basically lived at the hotel for 20 years. She's just been here for 20 years. People refer to her as 411. Nobody ever sees her. No one except for the head of the cleaning staff, who used to be a maid when this lady first came here, but is now the head. That's the only lady who's allowed into her room to clean it. And so basically June's like, I can't get rid of this lady. I'm just going to hire her and backdate the hiring date a month so that she can stay around. And to be fair, this lady does, for all the major parties or events at the hotel, she does all of the design work and the planning and the constructing of stuff. So you could make an argument that she is an employee, but she's also not.
You get the sense that she's kind of like an eccentric agoraphobic, where it's like she wants to stay in her little room, but she's very intelligent and snappish. She's a great character, though nothing is really done with her.
Nothing is really done with her. I wish more was done with her. Again, this is one of the too many things in the too many things soup.
She reminded me of one of the aunts in Raven Boys. I don't remember, but one of the aunts is like sort of unfriendly. And I was like, oh, it's the same archetype. It's good.
The same, but also with its own, like, she's got this class to her, like this knowing. Every section of the book opens with what her order for the day is to be delivered to her room, and she's just this cultured, like, and so it's that archetype of this like grumpy smart woman, but also like in a classier way. Like it's really well done. But anyway, so she gets rid of all the guests, and then the diplomats come. And our first introduction to the people that are going to be coming is from another POV switch to a little girl named Hannelore. And Hannelore is the daughter of a German cultural attaché, I believe is his position.
Attaché, I love that word, yeah.
Yeah. And it's him and his wife. I think it's Friedrich Wolf, Sabine Wolf, and then Hannelore. And Hannelore is autistic. Not that anyone at the time knows this, but she doesn't speak. She's super smart. Like, she writes, and she can write essays and stuff. So her parents know that she can hear and listen, and like they're aware that this is an intelligent girl, and she can also sing beautifully. And we get the first scene of Hannelore is how, when things are happening that she's waiting for to be over, or she doesn't know how to process, she just counts how many seconds it takes for things to happen, because prior to that, things took so long and would make her anxious. And she's found this as it's basically like an internal stim to help her deal with things. So she does it all the time. Like, she'll be having a full-on conversation with someone and counting how many seconds the conversation is taking. And by full-on conversation is they're talking to her and she's listening, or she's listening to someone else have a full-on conversation. She can intake all of that as well as counting at the same time.
I will say, okay, so here's the thing about her. I found her to be somewhat of a cliche character because she's significantly autistic. I don't remember what the particular term is. She has the kind of Rain Man, good with numbers stereotype that autistic people have. She has no real agency in the plot whatsoever. I kept expecting her to, and she doesn't. She's just there as a MacGuffin for other able-bodied characters to handle. Well, and so, like, you guys are more, because you guys both did tutoring with, like, a lot of autistic children. Did you guys feel like she was, like, kind of stereotypical?
I just thought she was nothing. She had no characterization to her. That's the problem. It just, like, maybe not in the right characterization, but she felt, like you said, like a MacGuffin. And like you also just said, I expected her to have more agency. That's what it is. I didn't realize that specifically was my issue.
Now that he says that, she doesn't have agency.
No, she does not. And it's not.
I kept expecting her to have some kind of magical bond with the Sweetwater,
yeah,
which I was like, okay, that's going to be problematic, the disability magic, but like, at least that'll be something. But in the end, it's like, nope.
There's even this specific one. I almost feel like maybe the author had like a split of thought that she changed how she wanted to end it at one point, because there's this one moment, which we have not gotten to at all, but there's this one moment where she thinks to herself, she's just like me when I was a child. I understand the water. And so far, as you are seeing of Hannelore, she does inherently, as soon as she comes to the land, she's like, there's something special about this land. You know, Hannelore, and you get a deep, very intimate perspective from her perspective when you get her on the train when she's introduced. And so you don't get almost that ever again to that degree. And it seems weirdly unbalanced because at the beginning you get so much of that, and not like as in quantity, but in depth. And yet you never really quite get that really again in a way that matters in the plot. And that seemed very plot heavy important because obviously she's arriving to the first, to the location, the setting. She's starting to notice immediately that there's something different about this land and this place. It's because she touches this moss and it's warm water and she has a feeling of some sort, and she sees June up on the balcony and stuff. So it seems very like heavy and atmospheric. And she never does a single thing throughout the whole novel. And she never interacts with that Sweetwater, even though it's said multiple times that she like hears it or whatever. And she like and with June's perspective being like she could commune with it, she observes and like being an observant. And so there's a point in the novel where June is like, I'll take her on. I was an orphan of the hotel at this one point. And so I thought at that moment, oh, she's gonna become the next Haas, and this is what this is gonna.
I thought that's where it was gonna go too, and she had the ability to commune. Now, again, I agree with Will that having two characters who are said to be autistic who can commune with the water and nobody else can is not great. But it would have added to it. But what I would have liked out of her is not even that. Like I thought that's where it was gonna go, and it didn't, and that's
what
fine.
I thought too.
I wanted Hannelore to make the decision about. Like, even though it was being made for her, but to want to stay and to express in a way wanting to stay, or like just something like that. Because for the most part, what I like is Hannelore is not a savant with numbers. She can memorize them, but she doesn't like, we're never shown that she's like a math whiz or that she's actually like, she writes good papers and stuff, and she has an appreciation for a lot of things.
Also, a child could memorize just a song with numbers.
Yes.
So that is reliably like, okay, fair enough. So, this child just has like,
as far as like classic
we should
stereotypes,
say very quickly that the conflict is that when she goes back to Germany with her parents, they're gonna sterilize her because they don't
not sterilize her. They're actually going to euthanize her. That's the fear that.
I thought
no. The sterilization.
That's what you're both right. Yeah, you're both right. No.
That's what they haggled down to.
Yes. So as we know, the Nazi Party was very anti mental illness or anything outside of the normal. So neurodivergence was a heckin' no. And so a lot of people who were diagnosed with mental illness were euthanized, or if it wasn't too severe, sterilized. And so the fear for Hannelore's parents is that and that what her mom always holds, but her father kind of sees differently, is that they will take Hannelore to Germany, and then she'll have a fit or a tantrum, as they say, and then she will be euthanized. And
so going to what you were saying is that she heard it at one point, and I thought, yeah, okay, this is going to make her decision is going to be, I don't want that to happen, because she clearly understands it's a bad thing, but that never really happens. Also, I interrupted you halfway through, and I feel bad. What were you saying before?
So what she heard was the sterilization thing, which is what the German guys were like. Friedrich, it's just
it's the Lothar guy. The Lothar guy, the Gestapo man, as it's described, it is his friend. Yeah. And he specifically he's like, no, silly, she won't be euthanized. She'll just be sterilized, and she'll be reconditioned. That's literally what's said.
Yeah.
Is that no? They're still she doesn't want to be a mother. Yeah. We'll sterilize her.
What a thing to assume, and that's the thing that I liked, is that what you got from Hannelore, and again, you could have used more from this, and what she really needed was some agency in this, is
you're right, Will.
What you understand is that she has a rich inner life, and that she understands what's going on around her, and I think a lot of times in depictions of like autistic kids that you see a lot in media, there's this idea that they don't fully understand what's happening and they don't get it. And throughout everything, Hannelore understands what's happening and is intelligent and conscious, and she might have reactions to things that are different than what other people are going to do, but she has a very, I would almost say, a sophisticated understanding of what's going on around her in a lot of ways, and I found that really good. But again, she feels, and because you are right, and having this conversation now kind of clarifies it, because I didn't get to this point last night when I was talking to Katie, but having this conversation now, she does kind of function as a bit of a plot device rather than a character on her own going on her own journey. Because if she had been like, oh, I would like to stay, or at any way articulated a want of her own that she then gets throughout the course of and she doesn't. Things happen to Hannelore.
The core structural problem is, like when we're talking about like genuinely, what would you technically do to fix this? Is that we are given June's perspective heavily. We are given Tucker's perspective heavily. And then right after that in the beginning, you are given Hannalore's perspective heavily. And so I'm like, this is a 3-perspective book. Don't love those, but like, okay, that's what this is. And then Hannelore just F's off into the distance, and so, you never get her perspective.
What I'm realizing is, because you actually do, there's quite a few scenes, like there's a really interesting scene with Hannelore after she starts following Sandy, and then there's also the scene with her going shopping with her mother. There's the scene where she thinks, so we do get quite a few scenes throughout the book, but the problem is a lot of those scenes are not actually about Hannelore doing things in those scenes, but we're getting information with Hannelore as the way of us getting it. So in the scene,
cipher. Yeah.
Yes, she becomes the cipher by which we get the information, and she's the point of view. It actually reminds me, now that we're talking about it, in Spinning Silver.
God, I'm so good at making people think and adjusting.
Shut up! We're all thinkers, you son of a gun.
And I am.
No, this is actually when you.
Yeah.
No. I know this is the conversation. Often when I talk to you guys, I'm like, oh, that's a good point. I didn't even think of that. So go ahead.
It makes me think of Stepan in Spinning Silver, where there's this scene where I actually really like Stepan as a viewpoint character, but the scenes that are from his point of view are just scenes where we are getting what is happening to other people.
Plot points.
From his point of view. And while I might, as a reader, find it a really interesting point of view to get that information from, we're not actually getting anything that we would have not gotten being in any other character's point of view.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, for a lot of Hannalore's scenes, she is just functioning as a cipher for us to get the information about what is happening and like things around the hotel. And it is not like her doing specific, like I think the most agency we get is she's doing the snail scavenger hunt, and she's gonna wait until she has every single goddamn snail location before she gets her lemon drops, and she doesn't even like them.
Seriously, things like that. Like, what do we know about Hannelore? We know nothing. We know that she can sing a German code for things that somebody taught her. We know that she counts seconds because it's the way to focus herself. And we know, but also, so another thing that I really think is important. So if Hannelore was a key feature, as in like a key perspective, like she is set up to be in the first several chapters, and that's what I talk about when I say it's unbalanced when it comes to her perspective, is that, so like, I mean, not that like, I haven't seen it before, and it's not like I'm like obsessed and I'm like, oh yeah, we really do explore that theme of her counting the seconds and everything. But I thought that would like come into play because it was so heavily emphasized at the beginning, where something would become interrupted, or she would stop doing that because her attention was given elsewhere that took up her time. So she no longer felt that need to count the seconds because something else more important was happening or something like that. And those themes are not carried throughout the novel.
As we're talking about it, I'm realizing that this needed to be a 2 POV book, and it needed to be June and Hannelore.
Yes, like absolutely. 1,000,000%.
And number one, then we could have genuinely had a what's going to happen with this romance. And honestly, Minnick might have been a better romantic interest completely just from June's point of view the whole time.
Agreed.
Because listen, I like Minnick. We've barely talked about him so far, but he's a really interesting character because he's not only from West Virginia, but he has a relation. He knows the Sweetwater, and he don't like the Sweetwater. This motherfucker's drowned in this.
But it would be more mysterious and scary if we didn't know his perspective of it.
Well, I actually found the Sweetwater very compelling from his point of view, more so than like some of the other characters' point of view. But my point is, if we had pared down his point of view, amped up Hannalore's, had it just June and Hannelore, I think that we could have gone in a slightly different direction, less focused on the romance and these two things. Because like there are some good scenes, but I think those two would have been a more pared down exploration. And because like the book is drawing a comparison between June, an adult who used to be, who very much looks at Hannelore and was like, I was like that as a child and I'm now like this. But also because there's this idea that Hannelore is the young Sweetwater. She is full of potential. And June is the Sweetwater that has been molded by the Avalon and filled with the Avalon's expectations.
Yes, exactly.
And so if you would have just carved it down to those two babies and let that kind of go from there and kind of, because one of the things June talks about is how like she wishes she could go back and tell her mother that eventually she would mature and she'd kind of figure it out and she'd find a framework with which to like live life and stuff like that. And you know, seeing that, knowing that with and because like there's a scene where Hannelore gets she's having like she's screaming because she can only have one book, and so that is another thing we know about Hannelore. Bitch likes to read.
I gotta be honest, relatable.
And they're after weeks of boredom, they're allowed to each have one book, the diplomats, and Hannelore is like, what do you mean one book? And she ends up like full on screaming about it, and June's like, oh, okay, can I try help? And her parents are like, who are you, stranger woman, get out. But then like the German doctor is like, here is a syringe.
Let me shoot your daughter full
and June's
of
like,
this.
Excuse the fuck out of me. That's how we're handling the situation. And so it would have been really interesting to have, because like Hannelore's point of view was really interesting with the kinds of things she noticed. And again, they're well written point of view scenes, but because she's not actually she's not a main character. Hannelore is one of the cast of characters in the book. We have two main characters, and then Hannelore is a character where the only way to write her well is to write it from her point of view.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
It gets real dicey real quick. So you have to write it from her point of view. But the problem is, because you did that, and she's not a full-fledged main character, she lacks the agency to really add the punch you need. So this should have come down to the two.
Also, how great would it have been if Hannelore had been, like, vaguely haunted by the Sweetwater at first, by the memories of, like, not June herself specifically, but the reflections of the guests and stuff, but her being youthful. Like, the concept of the young will bring about a new age that is youthful, forgiving, and growing, versus the old age, World War II, of old hanger-oners who can't let go of guilt, can't let go of issue. You know what I mean, Will?
Here's the thing. We'll talk about how lame the Sweetwater is in a little bit, because it's real lame, and I almost feel like it doesn't do anything, and there's no way to make it thematically resonate. And so, like, you're right, that would have been better, but I just don't.
Revitalized it. No, Hannelore could have been in that moment. We could, like, I mean, maybe this is just now occurring to me, but
Hannelore's wait, finish your point, and then I'll say this. Finish your point.
I was going to say her lack of, I don't know if it's the same thing, but her youth plus her blank slateness plus her, like the Sweetwater of the mountain, wildness and whatever, which you could interpret in a negative way perhaps, but I think it's more of a magical way of interpreting it.
It's potential.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. And so, like, she revitalizes it and brings about youth to it once again to see the potential instead of only what has been. And, yeah.
Continue.
I'm done.
No, finish. Okay.
No, I'm done.
Or, similar thing, her so much potential, the way she observes and sees everything, and her, like, she could make a decision at the end of, as much as I like the Avalon, like, I don't want to be June Hudson, I do not want to be like perhaps she is kind of realizing, oh, I could be this thing, because there's this moment at the start of the book where she sees June and she's like, a woman.
Yes.
That's amazing. And then what if she's the reason it floods? She doesn't negatively.
Yes.
She unleashes the water and it floods and everything comes down, and she helps June realize that the Avalon, as much as she loved it, was actually holding her back and forcing a set of expectations that kept June. Because one of the things we're going to get about this, despite the entire first third where June's like, I love the Avalon, this is great.
It's great.
I'm a master of my craft. Is that it actually has been a very limiting structure to her. She performs, she's masking almost all the time who she actually is. And the book suffers because there's never moments where she goes back to her room and the mask drops and she's exhausted and she's tired.
We never get that.
Well, and the thing is, we're in her viewpoint. She is not tired in her viewpoint. Like, there are so many tiny, beautiful moments in this of her remembering Francis telling her something, or the way that she will notice a little thing or something like that. But we never get, like, the constant tiredness that we do from, like, Minnick's point of view, for example, for his work, where you get a sense that, like, yeah, he is kind of tired and bitter about this a little bit. Not that I think his character pivot makes a ton of sense either, but there's a little bit more there. Whereas from hers, it's just kind of like, yeah, you're fine. So later the book will insist that, like, this is such a heavy burden for her.
Yes.
And it's like, are you? You're a bad bitch at the top of your game.
Yeah, and you're like, nothing I've seen before this makes me think, because there was literally a point, and this is the same thing that happens in the romance. There was a point where Will, and I was past this, so I chuckled. Will goes, I think it's hysterical how into June Minnick is, and she doesn't even notice him. And then the book's like, she's been noticing him the whole time. And you're like, motherfucker, where? I was in her brain. What are you talking about?
She mentioned he was handsome like 3 times, and I noticed, and I was like, that's it.
It's so contrived. It's absurd, because when literally, I think probably in the exact middle of the book, it starts introducing this attraction to each other. And I'm like, from where?
From
like, where did this come
dude?
From? That was gonna be one of my later contrivances, is that is just contrive. I mean, yeah, I guess so. But grievances is what I meant to say. Grievances is that I don't believe in their love at all. Even
we'll talk about
even
it.
A modicum. Yeah. Even
because
a modicum.
Yeah, no, I agree. The reason we're not talking a ton about the plot, guys, is because there actually is, like, there's a plot, there's a one-to-one, but basically once the diplomatic attachés are in the hotel,
nothing
there's a lot of, like,
for a really long ass time.
Yeah, there's like a couple plot threads. Hannelore kind of discovers she's going to be euthanized. There's some bullshit about, like, spying. You figure out about their character some. Yeah, like, it's not bad. It's very pleasant to read, but we don't really need to describe it.
It's slice of life in the way that you don't, when you read a slice of life novel, you pick the major emotional points, which we've kind of gone over, but it's just like events, discussions about who's doing
the next
what.
Biggest... Sorry, continue.
Yeah. No. And so it really is like the middle section of this book you can kind of fly past as long as you hit the main points that, like, Minnick is like, damn, a general manager. And
oh my God, like... but that barely, like, literally, guys, when I was reading this book, I was like, obviously they're going to fall in love with each other at some point, but, like, it hasn't happened yet. And so I'm, like, 2/5 the way through the book. And I'm, like, listening to it, and I'm multitasking because there's a lot of stuff in my house that just needs to be cleaned. So I'm cleaning. And I'm listening, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I hear from, like, either June or his perspective. I think it was his perspective first, like you guys mentioned. But I hear something like, there's attraction. And I'm like, from where? Like, they hated each other 5 seconds ago.
Though?
Yeah.
Is there,
and it wasn't even, like, hot, like, I hate you stuff.
Sure,
it was just, like, that? It was just, yeah. Are you sure about that? Like, that's literally how I felt. Is I'm okay, and then I keep cleaning, and more of the book goes on, and all of a sudden I get her perspective from this middle moment, right, in the novel, which is why we're saying not a lot of plot happens. Well, neither does relationship development, honestly. It's because, like, in this moment, I'm like, wait, she's noticing, like, that he's, like, standing in a boxer way, and that's, like, kind of sexy, I guess. And I'm just like,
I gotta start doing that.
I find that to be very insecure.
No, I like it. I'm tough and squared off.
This is just such a weird thing because, like, there's so many little moments of getting these two characters
that you could have gotten them together, and it just doesn't actually happen. Like, so Maria mentioned, or Will, I think it was Maria that mentioned, there's this really beautiful scene, and it was actually one of the most poignant scenes in the whole novel that I think I'll remember the most, which is the paper airplane scene where and it's because it was also written well, because you start off with June's perspective and she hears something and it's a paper airplane, and then it switches.
Oh, and she's also crying because Sandy's it's her emotional breakdown moment.
Yes, she's having a moment to go have a cry because Sandy, the one Guilfoyle boy, the youngest that she saved from the Sweetwater, because she heard it talking, and then she went and saved him from drowning in it or whatever, and so then she became adopted basically into the family, and she became like a beloved little toy of the family, and that's how they grew up and everything. But she loves Sandy, and Sandy has come back from his training, and he's gotten shell-shocked from, like, training, which sucks. But that actually is a real thing. So, like, issues like that happen. So I kind of liked that. And so
I thought one of the problems with the book is that it's set too early. So it's like we know what's going on with World War II, but they don't know yet. And so some of the world weariness in the narrative just didn't make sense to me. But go ahead.
That makes sense. I can see what you mean by that. Like, a lot. I can see what you mean by that. But anyway, so the point being, though, is that shoot! I lost my train of thought.
She goes into she's mourning. Sandy came back. He's in a wheelchair. He's catatonic.
Yes, I was gonna say something about Tucker though with that, but I can't recall. So just continue. If I remember it, I'll bring it back up. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is there's a bunch of little moments that are all really good. Like the one Katie was describing, great moment. And again, it's a moment of tension because Minnick comes and he's like, these people aren't supposed to be here. You shouldn't have let them in here. My entire operation for spying on everyone is behind that door. What if they would have seen it and then they would have not said things?
It's a great moment because this is, again, one of the times Stiefvater is like, sorry, Ellen. I did it without thinking about it. When Stiefvater.
You're trying your best. It's fine. She'll love you for it.
And so this is one of the moments where it's these two German waiters, and there's this whole time it's been like, there's Heinrich coming, who's like a stunt plane guy who like back then is a thing. He's like a celebrity. So they're throwing airplanes with him, and it's just like a very cool moment.
Did you just call him Heinrich?
I almost called him Heinrich Himmler, but that's actually somebody and not a good reference. So you're lucky. But there's and it's a great moment because she goes up and throws planes with them, and he's like, I don't really want to be in Germany because they will make me drop bombs, but I miss my fiance. She doesn't know what happened to me. And
oh my god, you just blew through Scottish accents. There was Scottish. There was a little bit. Wow, that was impressive.
That was wild.
That was a roller coaster.
I love that Will and I suck at accents, but you are like, but you can't be forced into it. You have to just magically do it.
Happen organically.
Anyway, yeah, and so it's like one of those really great character moments that like hits, and you feel like this world is kind of real, and there's other people in it, and it kind of ties into like the war a little bit, and the more nuance of like, some of these German nationals don't want to go home, and that kind of a thing. And then then there's the moment with Minnick where he's like, my whole spying operation's over here, and you nearly got me compromised, bitch.
Yeah, and it's just this great because like they're like angry with each other, and it's a moment that would have been great if they had developed past this into a enemies to lovers type thing, or like into begrudging. Like now that we're talking about it, I want her to have not been. I want her and Minnick to have ended up as friends, and I honestly would have liked Minnick and Hannelore because I think that would have been a great dynamic.
Yes,
for two people. Okay. And also because my headcanon at the end, so that letter where it's like, and I've never heard much from Hannelore. She's more interested in other people's secrets than her own. And I'm like, oh my god, did she go into the FBI? Did Hannelore become an agent? And I'm like,
that would have been great.
How awesome if her and Minnick had become friends, like not even friends, but just like begrudging people around each other who bond a little bit. Oh,
I remember now what I was originally going to say, which is not that like impressive or anything, but all I was going to say is...
Oh, so I was going to say...
Oh, you son of a gun.
Go ahead.
But the point is like, the whole point of that whole interlude that I went into before was, in this novel, when you're like maybe 2/5 the way through it, you get a lot of slice of life, whatever, no real development of their romantic relationship, which is supposed to happen, until she comes out of this
Avalon 4.
she comes out of something called the Avalon 4, which I've mentioned before. And it's because she's trying to feed Sweetwater happiness, because we learned that she needs to feed it happiness for it to be happy, because reflection, mirror,
and all of these diplomats are filling it with rough shit.
Exactly.
They're unhappy. They're moody bitches, and she has to deal with it because like even the town is like, the Sweetwater's turning, Haas, and she's like, the water don't work that way. And
yeah, and she's like, it does actually, apparently. I've gotten too prideful. And so she goes down there and she spends 3 days there, basically. 2 days, 2 to 3 days. We should have got, first of all, I think there's a debate to be had whether or not structurally you need to have that narrated. But I personally feel that I missed something important from not having the pain of that moment portrayed in some way, whether that is in the moment itself or the aftermath. And so anyway, my point is immediately after that aftermath, where she's like, let me try to balance the waters, because all of the stuff that we don't really need to rehash because you can just read the book then, is that freaking
they have a romantic getaway.
Tucker's right outside, and he's in with her limo that apparently everybody knows she owns, that she was gifted. And she's like, oh, if I had more emotion to me, I could appreciate this more. And I'm like, this is not being explained in the right way. Like,
So
even as that... Yeah.
Structurally, I think you do need that scene because of what you're saying.
For sure. But I just don't feel like it was framed the right way.
Yeah. Or you don't get the Avalon.
No. Structurally, you need the scene of her in Avalon 4. Remember how you're saying how there could be an argument?
1,000,000%. Thank you.
The argument I would make is you either have to have the scene in Avalon 4, or you need a better her coming out of Avalon 4.
Yes,
like
one of the two.
You don't necessarily need her in Avalon 4, but if you have her coming out gasping, where she's just laying there, Toad has to pick her up, put her on the bed, she convalesces for,
to be fair, I get what you're saying, Maria, because we've read those things. We have read those pieces that show those scenes. But I feel like for some reason in this novel, you need to have what the Sweetwater's doing to her in that moment.
You also, the reason I'm going to agree, despite the fact that I think if done well, showing the aftermath in more detail would work, is there is the idea of you have a hotel, because this isn't just the normal, so every once in a while, Mr. Francis, and then now our girl June, has to go into Avalon 4, which is there's 4 like places where you can have a Sweetwater hot spring.
The grossest, least luxurious version of the spring.
No guests go here. Avalon 4 is a battleground. It's where Mr. Francis would go when the Sweetwater needed to be
equalized,
and you go in and you give it all your happiness, and it gives you all the negativity, which for a hotel normally, not too much terribleness, but you have a bunch of Axis diplomats and
we should have gotten that.
And journalists. Like, another thing we haven't mentioned, there's this whole thing where 3 journalists try escape from the Avalon because they know if they get sent back, Germany is probably going to not be nice to
euthanize them.
And they are trying to escape, and somebody in the hotel helps them escape. So you have fear for lives. You have these different groups of people that don't like each other, that are like arguing. There's so much tension, and there are brief moments where we get the water kind of being sour and kind of turning a bit. Like, there's this point where like it smells, and she has to get all the couples who are recently engaged and get them to pick pennies out of the fountain, because their happiness from their engagements will give the fountain, like give the water as they're picking the pennies.
That's great shit.
And there's a bunch of little things like that, but this is like, this is the seriousness where she has to go in and she has to give up herself and take on all the negativity. Well, and this is not just the negativity of like a normal hotel. It is the negativity of people waging a war and hatred. Yes. Because one of the things she realizes is 3 of the Germans that she kind of just were like, oh, those are 3 of the Germans, are like legit Nazi party members. They're not just 3 people that happen to get caught up in this that happen to be German. They are like legit like there's all of this stuff, and she has
the
to
thing
take
is
it in.
there's also foreshadowing that never comes to fruition of, and maybe I shouldn't say foreshadowing that doesn't come to fruition. It is a detail that I felt should really intrinsically be slightly explored, not to its full extent, but to a certain degree to create that horror that this is war, this is what it takes for war, which is the Avalon 4 is this small itty bitty bath. It's a small itty bitty space. Like when she lays in it, she could probably touch both sides, is what she says. But underneath it is a cavernous region that she knows not of. And it's terrifying. And I almost feel like in that moment where she went in there for this particular situation, like what was underneath or what inklings of what was underneath could have like tickled her toes or taken her down or whatever. Like just something that really drew the horror of the anger that simmered beneath everything. I don't know. I just felt like that was a detail that was specifically highlighted in a way that felt artistically important.
The problem is this is trying to be a horror movie. It is trying to be a Wes Anderson. It is trying to be, and it can't commit, because if we had one that was really just going to embrace the grimness of the situation, there would be a scene where the water embodies the hatred of the hotel in a way that we get to see the impact on her, where she does feel like she's being dragged down, and maybe Minnick and Hannelore come and save her from it.
Yeah, that would have been great.
Where Minnick has a dream where she's floating dead and she's nothing but sweet water. And it would have been awesome for them to be like, why do you do this? This is really fucking weird. For someone to have a conversation with her, like, you going into this, you doing this is really fucking weird. And maybe Hannelore, like, idolizes
and it's abusive
June.
In a way.
Yeah,
I was going to say that like an hour ago. I'm like, actually, now that we're talking about it, this kind of sounds like an abusive relationship.
So the problem is that the sweet water should be a very potent magical element that gives metaphor to the theme so like for one point, for example, she talks about how like Francis like kind of viewed her as like, yeah, he respected her because she was one of the only people who could take in the water, and like that's what kept his his family, he didn't want to have to touch this thing, but it didn't, but so he would put her, she's more like a trained dog than she is a family member. That metaphor doesn't work though, because his family was rich anyway. So it's not a potent class metaphor of the poor having to take on the suffering of the rich so that the rich can remain.
He was doing the thing. Like, he did the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, like, exactly. So
everything he asked of June, he was imposing upon himself the whole time.
Yeah, so it doesn't even really make sense in that respect. And you could also shift it to maybe more of like the war's hatred is what she's taking in when she goes into the sweet water. But no, neither of those are the reading. It's just like the sweet water can kind of, I kept expecting the sweet water to do something cooler.
Yes, me too.
Or I just would have liked a moment for someone to go, why are you doing this? Like, this is a really weird fucking thing to do, June. Like, and I think Katie's right. It is legitimately abusive. And I would have liked for Hannelore to idolize June, and then in this moment see this thing she's doing, and it's like, oh, you're giving up you're
being abused.
Yourself.
You're not a great heroic character. You're unfortunately you're the whipping kid. Or what's the title of that novel? The Whipping Child or whatever? Whipping Boy.
Whipping Boy.
The Whipping Boy. You're the whipping boy. Like, I thought you were some...
No, go ahead.
No, from Hannelore's perspective in particular, if we had gotten that, she could have been like, I thought you were this heroic, beautiful, Valkyric creature that was strong, but really, you're still being abused. And then her inspiring in her, or like some type of feeding off each other's energy, where it's like there's a balance finally made. You know what I mean?
Completely. And it also should be something where you're correct, because it is framed as we're told it's abusive essentially later on, but she pays no cost for it. Again, she's really fine.
Yeah.
And you think there's going to be a revelation that there's something wrong with the sweet water, because Minnick does not like it. He does everything he can to avoid it. It's in the water, but he'll only have bottled water. He doesn't even like having it at night around him. He goes into like this rain cistern place. And nothing even happens with that. It's fine.
Yeah, nope.
Like, it's not like the water remembers anything.
Yep, and it because you think that's going to be, and again, she can't adequately explore those without going too deep into a darker version of this book. Because to do that, to explore the real negativity, or to explore what, like, to have a book where, you know, June thinks she's okay, but we as the reader get all these moments of where she's exhausted and tired, and we see the aftermath of what is happening, and it's kind of building, kind of like a. Not exactly, but kind of like, what's that one horror movie guy who does a great job building tension and like building like a...
That's a lot.
Stanley Kubrick.
No. Midsummer.
Ari Aster.
Ari Aster. Similar to an Ari Aster film where there's that like, there's this normalcy, but there's this growing sense of dread.
Yes,
and like
exactly.
building up,
and
building up to Hannelore going, the Sweetwater's not good for you.
And you're not good for it at this point.
You're like, and then like having Hannelore like bust it open and be like, we all need to be ourselves, like, you know, and have this moment. The hotel floods and it's this like catastrophe, and she's like,
but it's a party too.
Yeah, but it's a party, like something like. Sorry, my chair's so squeaky, guys.
Guys, I am so looking forward to Maria moving to a new house because I can't stand that stupid fucking chair.
I can't stand it either. I hate it. It's
I have to put a noise filter over it so that when she's not talking, it doesn't make noise.
You guys would not appreciate this, but look.
Is your fan still making a noise? Because that also annoys me.
No.
What?
No, her chair doesn't make
it's
noise.
silent.
She's showing off.
I had broken wheels for the past 4 years. And Juan just replaced them, and I sat in it, and I almost went across the floor, and I was like, "Oh my god, how luxurious!"
It is indeed. But yeah, so I'm gonna just try zoom through the remainder.
We left off basically the last part. We technically,
they were having a break where they're going to the Kentucky holler to be like, hey, we're on vacation, we can fully be ourselves, we don't have to reflect and mask. And she's like, God, you're hot when I don't have to do that.
I mean, he's not wrong, but the point is at that point where they go up into the mountains.
And so they go up into the mountains. Oh, something I wanted to mention that also isn't explored, and I'm so sorry, guys, to derail us. The Lily House. I know. This beautiful cottage that Frances Guilfoyle left in her name, and she's like, I want to live here. It was supposed to be for the eldest daughter once she got married and came back to the hotel, but ain't nobody doing that in the Guilfoyle girls. And so he left it to her, and she's like, I want Ed to come and we can live here and it'll be my house with him and this life and this whole thing and this and she wants
sounds
it. There's
great.
this bathtub scene and she just wants it. And she also has this gorgeous the limousine, which is why I'm mentioning this, because he also gives her a limousine, which is just an impractical thing to have as a single woman. You know, how you drive it and you're in the driver's seat and then it's just empty behind you. And Minnick finds her right after, literally she opens the door of Avalon 4 and there's Minnick how you doing? And they go up into the mountains and they basically realize they're both from the same hometown, which is a tiny little
holler.
It's a dead town because it was flooded a couple of years ago.
How did you guys real quick feel about that?
It's kind of pointless.
Yeah, it's pointless. It feels pointless.
It's pointless and dumb.
This is about the point where the book is like, guys, she's not happy. She needs to go back to her roots. And you're like, does she? She's kind of a boss-ass bitch.
I know!
It's really weird because the book tries, there's a crumb of him being someone trying to completely let go of past and tradition, make himself new, and her as someone who not only has her accent, but plays it up for other people, but also is very much entrenched in a past and a tradition. She is an embodiment of the Avalon, its tradition, its legacy.
She is a spirit of the forest type of thing.
Yeah, and so you have these two people, one pushing forward to leave everything behind, and one kind of she still lived in her West Virginia her whole life.
Trying to unearth
She still has her accent. And so if this book had been, pared down and about something and having the two of them a little bit more like a book that Will and I and Elin just read, where you have two characters, one trying to go forward and one stuck in the past. The infinite and divine.
Oh, the infinite and the divine. Yeah, that's a good point.
Because technically Exactly. That is, the book is trying to do that between
Yeah,
these two
that's
characters
true.
and their pasts and how they lived their lives. He is running from it, and she has stayed very close to it, but isn't exactly looking at it, but is still entrenched in the traditions of this institution she's a part of. And yet they both have the similarity of being entrenched into these different institutions, but how they're handling it. And so in a book that had actually been more about the two of them and the differences between them, and this had been developed long before, this scene could have worked and been really interesting, and realizing that he had been there when this town flooded, and that's where his terror from the Sweetwater comes from, and how fucking absolutely terrifying that is.
Like making him a sheriff instead?
No, not even that. I like that he's an FBI and he tried to get away, and he went to a profession that would absolutely destroy his accent. Like, he has no accent.
Okay.
Nobody who hears him thinks he's from there. There's even that moment where he makes the comment about West Virginia, where he tells them something about the Golden Delicious apples,
Yeah,
and they're
I
like,
remember that.
"Oh, you are from here." Nobody
And they're like,
knows.
ooh.
Yeah, nobody knows and can tell. She did, because she noticed the Cole tattoo, but nobody else even realizes he's from West Virginia, versus her, where she sounds. So you have these two opposing ways of dealing with traumatic pasts.
Oh, I
and
get it.
Neither of them are completely dealing with it, but the way they're not dealing with it is completely different. And then having them come together and explore and unearth everything together.
That's true romance novel, though.
Yeah,
and that's so. I
again,
think the thing is,
too many things.
yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. You have to decide whether this book is about her and Hannelore or about her and him, and it's neither at the moment.
Yeah. Anyway, so this scene happens. They kiss in the car, and he's like, "Wait, the FBI's mad at me, and if I can't do anything with you because I'm really trying to get back into the FBI." And she's like,
basically,
I choose the hotel, so we're just gonna go back and pretend none of this happened." And then they go back, and there's a wedding that happens. Because
and during this wedding, also, like, is it during? I don't remember if it was. No, it was after the wedding. There's this one scene that took me out of it. There's only one scene out of this whole book that really took me out of it. And it was this one description. Oh, I know what it is. I'll wait till we get there.
Yeah.
It's when we get there, I want you to know it's the scene where they sit with their fingers, with their legs dangling off the concrete into the wildflowers, when we know about Sandy in truth.
Okay. So real quick, I need to talk about Pennybacker. So Pennybacker is this kind of initially seeming ineffectual. He talks a lot, but doesn't seem to be saying much. He's not getting to the truth of it. And he's presented originally kind of like in a ineffectual bumbling buffoon light. And what you learn about him is he's the devil's arithmetic guy. He's the guy who's trying to make the numbers work, because for every diplomat and Axis person that is here, there's a corresponding an American person, and it is his job to make the on this end make the numbers work so that the people in Germany that are American get sent back to America, and the people here get sent there. And so he's trying to juggle some things. And one of the things he's actively trying to do is when June learns of the concerns about Hannelore and talks to Sabine about it, and about how, like how kids with mental illness and, the diagnoses in Germany are being euthanized, June's like, "Oh, hey, and goes to Pennybacker and was like, "You need to try make Hannelore stay." Like, and also, Lisa Lauterberger, the journalist who tried to escape earlier and was like, "I will be," like, she's like, "We also need to try save her." And Pennybacker's like, "I can only do as much as I can do for the math." Like, this is, and there's this idea where you realize that he's actually, despite initially writing him off as a character, he's actually a very significant character within, like, the political, like, if this had been the more political version of this. And I actually really like Pennybacker, because one of the other things that
he's one of the best
background,
characters.
His wife and him are separated, and he keeps writing her letters all the time, and June's like, "Stop writing her. Just stop sending her letters."
Rephrase. Pennybacker learned that she was cheating on him with somebody else, and he was very hurt. And then this whole World War II thing happened, and they got separated, and she had been writing him, and Yes, as Maria said.
Yeah.
Continue.
And he listens to June, and it works. His wife starts sending him letters because she was never responding. And after he gets the second letter from her, and he still hasn't responded, she's like, "Keep the third one's gonna be the charm."
She says the third one you're gonna frame.
Yeah,
and you're gonna see.
And so there's this whole thing happening in the background, but you also get the idea that he's actively doing numbers. And one of the best scenes in the book is so after she goes off and does the thing with what's his face, and there's this point where Lisa Lottaberger realizes that the repatriation is happening, and she jumps from the fourth floor, or I guess
it's put a little
trigger.
Right.
No, put a little trigger warning before this. Well,
no, come on.
We're almost 2 hours in. At this point, it's a little late.
She jumped off to end it.
Yeah, and it's the scene is told from the point of view of Hannelore, where again, it's one of those scenes where Hannelore herself, like, it's not like she's having a grand revelation in this scene about, like, she gets information.
It's actually a pretty solid scene.
It is a solid scene, but it's a great example of Hannelore herself isn't, like, she was trying to follow Sandy. Mm-hmm. She heard her dad and this other guy talking about how she was going to be, she's going to get sterilized, and then she sees this woman, like,
and at first it looks like just something random, and then she's like, maybe it's a set of clothes that fell off, and then it's this and that, and she's like, oh no, it was a woman.
Yeah. And so there's this point where after this happens where our girl June is like, we need to keep Hannelore. Like, if Lisa Lottaberger was that scared, like, we need to make the numbers work. And he's like, I can't send Lisa Lottaberger back now, and there's a certain number of Americans that I need to get back here, so Hannelore has to go. And so then she's like, we'll get Eric von Lichtberg Serum's fiance. Find his fiance. He wants to be with her. She wants to be with him. Just find her. And he's like, oh, it's too hard. And she's like, you haven't even fucking tried, motherfucker. And basically they find Eric's fiance, partially using her connections in New York, the New York hotel landscape. And they bring her, there's a little wedding. During this wedding, her and Minnick have like,
they go into a children's playhouse thing that's like on the upteenth level of luxury. And they go up a hidden staircase that she uses a hidden lock for. And they go upstairs, and it's a room full of drawers, and each drawer has, which this actually could have been played upon metaphorically, but it was not, in my opinion. Like, I don't know if she meant for it to be, but I don't think she did. But they were all, like, symbolic representations of certain archetypes. And so, like, you know, he brought out a puppet of something for a puppet house, because it was, like, all, like, children's stuff. And then she brought out a doll of something something, and he brought out a doll of something something, and then they almost boned.
Yeah, they start doing stuff. Like, they definitely hook up.
I knew Will would enjoy that switch.
And then there's a commotion outside, and her head waiter is being arrested because this other. Remember when I mentioned those three people who tried to escape,
Maids.
And they were helped
uniforms.
They were given uniforms by someone. Well, actually, it was her head waiter, whose name is Steven.
No, and Sebastian.
Sebastian is a really good guy, and he basically confessed that it was him who did it to Minnick, and Minnick's like, oh, shit. What?
Sorry. Never talk to the police without a lawyer present.
Thank you very much. Period. Full stop. No, if you're innocent, not innocent, sort of innocent, only a little innocent, doesn't matter. Get a lawyer
immediately.
Always
immediately. Anyway, so it's a scene where, like, Minnick helps them do some stuff, like, work-wise, and so, like, the staff is, like, bonding to Minnick's bonding to them, but he also gets this piece of information that Sebastian just gives him, and he's like, oh, shit, like, they tried to help these people, he actively provided aid to these people who weren't supposed to leave, like, oh my god, and
this is bad.
Yeah, and he's deciding whether he's going to act on this information or not act on this information, but
Wait,
Yeah.
because prior to all this moment, Minnick has been given a resignation letter with his name signed at the bottom saying, basically, it doesn't say this, but the intrinsic value of this item is that if you screw up on this mission I'm sending you on, government man, G-man, then unfortunately we will fire you even though you have 10 years of service because of this one little thing, because we can blackmail you, and if we blackmail you, hopefully we'll get more value out of you, like is what I'm assuming is the whole thing of behind it, because otherwise why would you blackmail a 10-year veteran of your service?
It's less blackmail than it is you need to do something that makes us think that this little blip in your past is not something to fire you over.
It's blackmail.
It's more like you did a terrorist thing and we want you out, but I guess if you're not going to go immediately, then you really need to prove
fair
yourself.
enough.
Yeah,
fair
because
enough.
that's what it is. Because they're not threatening. Blackmail would be like, we're going to release this information. This is a threat. It's not blackmail.
Well, I mean, it's a threat. The point is it's a threat. Yeah. And so,
and so he has to do a good job.
Yes, that's the point. Is if you don't do a good job, something bad will happen to you.
And they're really happy with some of his stuff, but they're like, but we need you to give us a goose. We need you to give us a morsel that we can put in the papers.
Egg laying goose.
Yeah, we need someone who like find a spy, and the implication is you can make one up. We just need something, and then here's this head of the wait staff helping out these people that he's not supposed to help.
And he's like, nah, I'm so hot for June, I'm not gonna report this.
Yeah, and he's like processing it, but then the decision's made for him, because there's this other guy who's like a womanizer
who's just like been screwing every single call girl on the premises, which over there are 40 approximately. Yeah, and so he's
been having a good time. Yeah. And that guy was like, ha ha ha, I'm going to arrest Sebastian. And I'm
going to get the increase in pay and status.
And I honestly, what I did like is that June isn't like, you took me in here to distract me from this. You know, like there's not that moment where she's like, oh my God, you were in on this. Like,
I did appreciate
She can tell from his face that he is equally shocked about the situation. But this kicks off the end of the thing where she goes in to talk to Pennybacker about she goes in expecting to talk about Sebastian, and then Pennybacker's like, what are you worried about? We're leaving. It's done. Everything's over. We're like, all of this tomorrow midnight, everything's going to be gone. People are packing up. And she's like, what do you mean? And then she's like, what about Hannelore? And he's like, well, I have to send Hannelore. And this is one of the best scenes in the book, because it is this moment of real understanding of what, and again,
agreed.
It is unfortunately not fully developed within the grander scheme of it, but as a scene
but it's itself, so good.
Because Pennybacker, like, I don't want to say throws his dick on the table, but does the equivalent of throwing his dick on the table, where she's questioning him, and he's like, please read this file. And
read about how both of her parents are supreme Nazis and just like horrible human beings, and that this kid unfortunately is the product of their two people coming together, but like I can't do anything because they are both not Hail even Hitler that. Nazis.
Not even that. The part that really hit me was that the Americans that are in Germany, that are in Japan, that they are literally fighting. And then he was like, look at how much weight they're losing. They're not being treated. Our people over there are not being treated the way we're treating these people. Yeah. And my job is to get as many Americans home as possible. So who on this list am I leaving off because you want Hannelore to stay? And he was like, I want Hannelore to stay. I would keep her if I could. If it was just about a place to put her in. He's like, but I can't. I have to make the numbers line up. This isn't about one girl. This is about the
devil's arithmetic, as he calls it.
It's the devil's arithmetic. And you realize that this guy who's been like pining after his wife and sending all of these letters, and who has just been this buffoon, has been like secretly,
as we learned already, requested a divorce from his shitty, abusive wife who cheated on him.
Yeah, and he just has this moment of like laying it out, and also being like, and also the State Department doesn't really like, Hannelore is not a good sob story because her parents are assholes. Like, the State Department doesn't want the Nazi daughter. Like, if you found but then he also gives her a bone of, but because Hannelore is going to go, Lisa Lottaberger is going to get to stay. So you did, because you found Sebastian's
not good enough,
fiance, Lisa Lottaberger, Lisa Lotta is going to be able to stay and have a life here. And so you did help someone. And our girl June is in this moment, like, she's like, fuck the Avalon. Fuck everything. I'm going to save Hannelore. I'm not going to compromise my values. I am going to, save everyone. And she basically goes to Minnick and she's like, Minnick, this is what I'm doing. You're in our, and Minnick has also, there's another great scene where Minnick talks to his one compatriot, and he's like, I'm quitting the FBI. This is it for me. I'm done. And his compatriot's like, good for you. You were like the FBI's bestest golden boy, and you deserve this. And then the staff of the Avalon is like, congratulations. We're
Here's
so glad you're quitting.
But yeah, no, this is actually the scene I mentioned before. So upon several of these revelations and everything, June goes into the house that which is not the Lily house. It's another house of some sort. It's another
the
cabin.
One where Minnick's staying at.
Yeah, exactly. With the cistern where there's no sweet water, blah, blah, blah. And Sandy in the wheelchair is there. And then you realize, oh my goodness, look at that. How unsurprising. Sandy was actually a spy for the FBI. And he wasn't like neurologically damaged. He isn't stuck to his wheelchair. He actually can talk and walk and do all these sorts of things. And he's been collecting information on behalf of the FBI. And Minnick is like, yeah, June, now that I know you love me, I can tell you this.
I think that's why he did that. But yes.
Okay.
But it comes off.
Can we not say the timing is horrible? Because it's literally immediately after they have sat on the edge with their feet hanging in the wheat or whatever, and they've like revealed one upon another, and then he's just like, let's go inside, and they go inside, and Sandy's like, April Fool's, June.
I took it more as June was like, I'm gonna fuck the FBI and the Avalon, and I need your help, bud. And he was like, I've got an extra teammate. That's how I took it. That's a very kind perspective. I took it as a very selfish perspective because, like, I mean, not that it was unexpected. Like, yeah, he's working for the FBI. Of course this would happen. Like, I wouldn't have expected her to be angry. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that Sandy comes out of his chair and is just like, yeah, bro, peace, deuces. I'm actually
cheap.
Chill.
Yeah, it just felt cheap to me. Like, okay, really? That's what we're doing?
It felt very cheap.
Sandy actually being a spy felt cheap to me. But the moment Minnick decided to reveal it to her, I didn't have a problem with.
I mean, maybe I wouldn't have had a problem with it in a different scenario. But at that time, and I wouldn't say I have a problem with it. But, like, there was a brief 30-second moment where it brushed my heart the wrong way. And I was just like, this is like, I mean, I get it. Don't get me wrong. I totally get it.
It's in a different book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like, Sandy popping out of the wheelchair being like, just kidding, the whole time feels like it came from a different book that has a different tone. It feels kind of Marvel movie. It asks like it's the kind of thing that would happen in the and
like no matter what, everything will work out fine. But it's like the problem is like Sandy did feel underused. I was expecting that. I was waiting the whole damn book for him to be like, oh yeah, no, I'm actually fine, because it was not well framed. And the thing, it just all comes back to the framework of everything. And it felt very, like, expected. And when it happened, I was like, this feels like a gimmick. I, as the reader, feel like I'm being cheated. So I cannot help but feel that me as the reader being cheated is her being cheated in this one particular moment. And it feels just like a cheat. It feels like a gimmick.
Yep. And I will agree. I did not like, and part of me, I was sitting there last night thinking, like, would it have been better if he actually had been injured and then he just chose to lean into the shell shocked? And so he was wheelchair bound, but he chose to take on the catatonicness so that people would, because the idea is people ignore like an invalid or someone in a wheelchair, or, like nobody cares. And so people will just talk in front of them. He can just be put in rooms and people are going to treat him like a piece of furniture, which they do. But then I was like, no, I don't like that either. Like, it's this weird where like, you kind of just want Sandy
to... It's
too many things.
Too many things.
It's too many things. I mean, I was hoping for a genuine, like, him to start coming out of it and developing a relationship with a hotel guest at some point. And, like, starts to come out and talk about actual recovery from war stuff and how PTSD and shell shock is real things. And it was just such a weird, but again, there's no room for that in this book. So you might as well make Sandy perfectly healthy and he was a spy.
Yes, I agree. Also, I apologize for my... Yeah, understandably. I also apologize for sneezing. I tried to mute myself. And as I went to mute myself, I realized my mouse was dead from not charging, and I couldn't mute myself.
You couldn't get it out? You couldn't stop it in time? It's okay. I won't edit it out so that they'll all know your shame.
Oh, shit. Thanks.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, the book kind of just like, at this point, I didn't feel like it really, again, she never felt like she was being abused by the Avalon enough for it to be like, oh, I gotta leave this place to really live myself. Yes. Also, I was like, there's a bunch of people really depending on you for their jobs, which she points out and then is like, well, I guess they'll figure it out.
Well, there's this one character that she looks to and he's like, things always got to change, Haas. And it's like, oh, so
yes,
one character,
I know, but
one staff member was like, yeah, because she basically, her plan is to flood the hotel. Literally,
yeah, it's
flood the hotel.
Griff is like her number one man, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He was in on it by accident. The whole thing with Sandy and everything. And she looks to him, and as Maria said, he's like, things got to change, Haas. And it's like, I'm sorry, the whole town... We literally had a very specific scene dedicated to the rapport that she built with the town. And the rapport she built with the town allowed for her to create a peaceable relationship between the hotel and town, and how, like, we didn't even go over this, but she did there's like this whole theatrical thing where she's like, I know what they want and they want this, and it's because I know I'm the conductor of the orchestra that I know how to make the song. And so the song just like ceases to exist, which in and of itself could be a message. That could be a message. That could be an important message to say, where sometimes the song has to end. But that's not the way the story is presented at all.
It also just feels like, like when people are like, oh, I wonder if this is problematic. And one person is like, no, I don't think it's problematic. And then other people are like, no, humans are
we want our job.
You can't like, and it feels like that. Like one person was like, yeah, Haas, let's blow up the hotel. And she was like,
okay, that's enough of an okay for me.
And I get it as a symbolic nature, but this is why having June make this decision is just such a weird, because like, again, we've seen her loving the Avalon as an institution much more than we've seen her frustrated or tired or soul sucked about it. So it's this odd moment, and they use it as an opportunity to save Sebastian and to save Hannelore. She gets Hannelore, her and Hannelore plunge their hands into a fountain, and she's like, you can hear the sweet water. And she's like, and basically the two of them, by coaching the sweet water and feeding them like their intentions of more negativeness, the sweet water is like, we're turning, and it just floods, and it's like, whoo, and like crashing waves, filling things, like things like are washing away.
The whole picture...
The Shining,
the
but
blood
not
in
blood.
That's literally what I was going to say. Yes.
Yeah.
Picture the Shining blood elevator scene, but with normal water, except for it's spring
like
water.
Aggie.
Yeah, sulfur. Yes.
Sulfur.
And it comes forth, and it like, I do like the concept of. So when I had my wedding, we went to a place, as Marie can attest to, and Will may or may not be able to attest to. Well, the point is actually, all the water came from mineral water. If you use the tap water at any point, she specifically during the tour told me, this is all mineral water, my love. Like, we filter it a little bit, but only for the negative things like chlorine and charcoal and whatever. And she's like, so they had a water system outside where all the guests parked their cars / where I parked my car. But the mineral water still came in, and that was a selling point. So it's really cool that in the climax of this book that like the pipes burst, and it's kind of like the Titanic, to come full circle. It's kind of like the Titanic, to burst pipes and for it to be flooding. But it doesn't feel warranted given the situation.
And also, it is written so weirdly to where it feels like it's happening to a street block over. Like, this doesn't feel like this bombastic, impactful.
Nope.
You know, like the climax of the Titanic when the water, like that shit is. The climax of that movie,
fierce.
the last third is
fantastic. Harrowing.
This doesn't feel harrowing. Hannah Laura and her are like, and then the water started getting too high, so they left. and
that's it. Like, literally verbatim what Maria just said. That is what it says.
And so there's this grand, bombastic concept that is happening, but as a reader, it's like
it should have flooded the secret Nazis upstairs as they were trying to get out, and they were sucking breath for air, and Sweetwater read that moment.
That I don't even care about that. That's not what I want. Let them go back to Germany. What I wanted was to feel the horror of the Sweetwater.
That's what I mean, though.
Describe it, destroying
in some way.
the hotel. Let me feel the ferocity of it.
Well, again, if it's a metaphor,
beautiful waterfall.
Yeah, if it's a metaphor, this is the time the metaphor is the emotion of whatever the metaphor was released in this, like the Sweetwater wanting to clear away the old, or never wanting to be used again, or
like,
any
get out
of
of
that.
me because you guys are all haters and I want to be a lover. And so, F off, get out of my halls. And we only get one very small instance of that, and that's not actually what happens. All that happens is that the water comes down, doesn't hurt Minnick. / Tucker, and Tucker Minnick, also known as, and it comes down and it takes off the door that was that he could have kicked down. He said that was locking him between him and Sebastian, who was, helping the maids and stuff, and they wanted to release him and let him free and let him like wander off so that way he didn't get like electrocuted in the electric chair, and like that's it though, like. And it wasn't terrifying.
There's not even a moment where he thinks he's drowning and then he opens his eyes in the water.
It was June, so he could trust it.
Yeah, but like it would have been awesome if there was a moment where there's the horror of him thinking he's drowning, and then he opens his eyes and he sees the beauty of like the hotel under the water, and then he sees a path through which he can swim to get through the
water. Or the water rejects him and he realizes all this time the water wasn't trying to kill him.
To get him?
Yeah, exactly. Like something like where he sees that the water is allowing a path for him to get where he needs to go, and that water is just looking for a path out. If you contain it, it is looking for the path out.
A metaphor.
And it has nothing to do with personal vendettas. It has to do with nature finding a way.
And because there's also the whole thing about how we didn't even talk about this. Minnick flooded the mine that his dad died in because of all this other stuff. And when he floods the mine, that's when he ends up flooding the town. And he has that thing where he drowns, and so he has the negative. But the Sweetwater also, with that flood, it did what he wanted, but it also gets him out of the town. It propels him. And so what a beautiful moment to be in the water, like it's above his head. And then when he opens his eyes, he realizes there's a path out towards where he needs to go next. And he's like, that's what happened before. As traumatic as that was, it got me out of that town. It propelled me on my new life. The water, it'll find a way. I find a way. And then like, what a beautiful moment. No, we don't get it. There's too many things. And I can't stress enough how gorgeous moments of this book is. And the characters and there's this moment where Toad, the head of the cleaning staff, is berating this one girl, and it is just such a funny scene while stuff is happening. And there's so many beautiful little moments like that. Stiefvater, you are so talented. But there's so much about this book that feels like missed opportunities and so many beautiful things that don't fully get to coalesce into a gorgeous photo. God damn it.
Yes.
It really is like that. Again, the book gets away with a lot of it because she's so talented, but the structure is not there in the way it was for the Scorpio races. That chilling moment when Sean Kendrick goes down and then the horses pass and he realizes that Red stayed with him in a way he had never stayed with his father was just such a chilling moment.
And beautiful.
Nothing like, yeah, and it played into everything, and like, this never quite has that.
No, it doesn't. There's never that emotional sucker punch moment. Like, I cried at the end of Scorpio races. You know, like, it has emotional...
I cried 3 times during the Scorpio races. And
this book never got me to those heights.
No.
And it's just, it's bizarre.
Unfortunately, while very skillful, while obviously full of research, while obviously full of work and hard-earned recognition in some degree, I have to say Maggie Stiefvater. As Will cringes because he knows that's not the right pronunciation.
Stiefvater.
This is not as good as your Scorpio races book, bruh.
No, Scorpio races is just...
I would argue as a complete package, it's not as good as the Raven Boys.
Oh, shit.
No, read Raven Boys, Katie.
No,
It is
you mean
not
the first book or the whole cycle?
The first book. The first book was no. If you go back, that's a much tighter, neater story. It has a specific antagonist that you're dealing with. The story ends. It has the moment of realizing, like, so there's that point where you realize what's up with that one character, and then in the end, the moment where they do the thing to help him at the very, like, it worked structurally so much better. Like, it has a clear beginning, middle, and end.
Very few parts of this book made me care.
Yeah, again, I think the first 2/3 are very strong, but the problem is that
Agreed.
she isn't able to put in... The thing is, you're building up these elements, you're like, okay, let's see where this goes, and then she doesn't really know where it goes.
And then in the last third, she's like, this is the last third to a different book.
This is the last third to the book I planned to write, but not really the one I did write.
You know, it kind of, it does. It feels like the story got away from her and ended up going... Because again... Her and Edgar Guilfoyle are a much more compelling romantic love interest because
in the end,
so time giving you.
And there was so much longing too, and like a sense of like the her and him, and yeah.
So in general, just know, readers, that this relationship is built up more effectually, unfortunately, despite the fact that in the end it's very cheaply thrown at you that the only reason he wants to marry her is because, like, he feels guilty for selling out the hotel for not being drafted.
Not even
into
that.
the war.
He doesn't want people to bother him about it anymore.
No, yeah, that's what I'm getting to. Is that we never even explained that, is that he sold out the hotel to the FBI so he didn't have to be drafted to the war. And then once people started judging him for being a single male, like, in not general, he was like, yeah. And he was like, I mean, you've always been my backup plan, June. June, you've always been the thing that's always been there. Yeah,
it doesn't track with what you know of him throughout the book.
No, it doesn't, and it's gross.
I feel like you both had the same experience.
Yeah, I hated it.
It's a betrayal.
Also, who the fuck is Eric Parnell? Eric Parnell is, so at the beginning of the book, Eric Parnell is like, hi, thanks for your interest. Yeah. Here's my accounting of what happened in the thing. At the end of this book, a girl named Jillian Pennybacker, eventually our boy Pennyback gets married and has a kid. So, and that's the other thing I have to say really quick. They rescue Hannelore. Hannelore ends up living with Pennybacker.
Yeah, you get an epilogue and stuff.
Yeah. But then there's a letter where Pennybacker's daughter, Jillian, is like, Mr. Parnell, thank you for your story and sharing this with me. It did give me much more understanding of my father and also how he adopted Hannelore, because while Hannelore is very interested in other people's secrets, she's not at all interested in sharing hers. And I hope that Sweetwaters remember him and they're good for healing. And so the implication is, Pennybacker is old now. This is like 20 years later.
Yes.
He's old now. He obviously is ailing, and they'd like to take him back to the Sweet Waters to put him in it in the hopes of healing. And she contacted someone named Eric Parnell, who gave her the story of the Avalon and this whole thing.
Yeah,
and
Eric was like a member of staff.
And maybe he's the one the German guy who escaped and changed his life, but there's no actual hint at that besides he's a name we don't know.
Because I Googled, I bought the book, and so I didn't Google, but I searched for the name Parnell and Eric in the book itself.
It only Eric comes up. Eric comes up as part of staff, if I remember correctly, but Parnell, I do not know.
No,
I don't think so.
I'll do it again.
It could be the German guy who got away and changed his life, but the only hint of that is that it's a name we don't recognize.
Point is, though, obviously 3 different people didn't fully understand it.
Eric von Limburg's serum, and that's the only other. That's the only Eric.
That's the only other Eric. And
there's
so,
no other Eric.
You don't really have much foreshadowing to provide for that epilogue at all. And also, in the end, it's which I thought was kind of cute, but not that great. Which was oh yeah, June probably went to Florida with that one guy, and they probably lived happily ever after. And that's all you get. And that's kind of cute in some regard, but it's also with the rest of the story, as we just discussed, kind of frustrating.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
And it just because it would have been so much nicer to have whoever was writing this story and sharing it with Pennybacker's daughter to be someone we had seen through the telling of it. And it's just no one. I can't figure out who Eric Parnell.
Hannelore, if she inherited the hotel and it didn't become a war hospital afterwards, and it was actually still a hotel, and they never left, and they lived in the Lily House.
What was that? I'm sorry.
You cut off right at the very beginning, so you started listing things, but we don't know what context.
You said
basically. June lived on with whoever she loved, doesn't matter who, I'm not even including that part, and stayed in the Lily House, which was supposed to be hers, and it was still a hotel, and you're
stating a hypothetical.
Yes.
Okay,
so this doesn't have to do with Eric Parnell.
No. Oh God.
We couldn't hear the beginning of what you said.
Second.
Yeah, no. It really, because I was it would have made so much more sense if it connected, and then all of a sudden you were Lily House.
That's when you guys we were when I said Lily House.
What is happening?
What is going
I heard something about Hannelore, and I was like, what?
No. My whole generalized point was that Hannelore actually was the next innkeeper, and which doesn't need to have happened, but that would have made the connection maybe make more sense. And then somebody who that, do you see my picture without even saying it?
No. Are you talking about in relation to what the
Avalon?
Ending?
The Avalon.
Just the Avalon in itself. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
It's fine.
All right.
It's not important.
Thank you guys for hanging in there.
Thank you.
This is probably the last time the 3 of us will be together for a bit. Nostalgia Squad. If you liked this, subscribe to our Patreon, subscribe to the channel, and support independent journalism.
Everyone, be good, be kind, be awesome. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.